My guest today on Over a Beer, Café Luxembourg, is Kathleen Van Brempt, Belgian MEP and Vice President of the Social Democrats in European Parliament. We're going to talk about Dieselgate, about social policy in the European Union and the leadership crisis across Europe. Kathleen Van Brempt, let me ask you about Brexit. When you see how Brexit, the referendum, how it was won, on the back of lies, I don't think many people would disagree with that proposition.
Not anymore, not even maybe the Brexiteers, I don't know.
When you see this level of almost anarchy, this complete oblivion when it comes to the truth, does it say something to you as a European that maybe you shouldn't let Britain go quite so easily? Maybe you have a responsibility to repair this democratic damage, which is in some ways contagious. We see Nigel Farage now about to do his great European tour. Do you think that the European Parliament has a responsibility to repair some of this damage, to maybe keep Britain within the European Union?
It's a very difficult question and heartbreaking for me because I absolutely hate to see the Brits go because for me, it's also a balance in the European Union. It's also rebalancing only German or France. But it's also, I absolutely adore the Anglo-Saxon way of doing politics and how they differ so much from the continent sometimes. So I think we absolutely need them. But having said that, what we shouldn't do is play with the public. There's an outcome.
But Tony Blair, who's also a socialist, Tony Blair said, well, a name at least. It's only said that you have to give the British people the entitlement to change their mind, and that the referendum itself is part of the political process. It is not the definitive, it is not the end. Do you think the British people should have the right to change their mind?
Absolutely, but I'm not convinced if you organize a second referendum that they now all of a sudden would vote to remain. I don't think so. I don't think that's the way it works. I think people become very angry if you don't take them seriously, and of course they have to change. They have the time to come, the next years to come. They can change their mind. They always can rejoin, but I don't see how you can now sort of try to organize a second referendum or what I've heard as well, sort of new election, but then. Well, Labour will certainly not win, so I don't see the advantage of that. No, I think we have to deal with that in the interest of everybody, and especially in the interest also of the rest of the European Union.
Well, what do you think about that in terms of nobody's prepared to offer Britain anything at this point which is going to be better than the deal that they have, but Europe really needs reformed, and Guy Verhofstadt, whose cabinet you served in as a Minister of State in the Belgian government, he's proposing a series of reforms. What do you think about two-speed Europe? Because pretty much it exists in many areas anyway, Schengen, the
Absolutely.
Eurozone. Is it time for two-speed Europe?
Well, that's what I always answer. We have a two-speed Europe. And as long as a two-speed means that we find common ground to move ahead, and it's very difficult to find that common ground from day one amongst the 27. And if you find that amongst 15, yes, absolutely.
How do you reconcile, for example, Guy Verhofstadt's great federalist vision with the daily political reality where many Europeans are saying, I want my national identity, I don't want a federal Europe?
Well, I hope Verhofstadt himself realizes that he needs to back off a little bit. I know him quite well. I am happy with the fact that he's on the negotiating team because he's a good negotiator and he has the heart in the right place. And so he will defend the overall European interest, and that's good. But he needs to downsize on his federal ideas because it's not the time nor the place to move ahead on that.
Do you think he understands that? And this is a matter of pitching his tent?
It's a good question. I don't know him that well in the sense that I can look into his way of thinking. But he's... don't ever forget that he's been a prime minister for quite a long time, and so that means in Belgium. That's not just any country, that's a very complicated country with different
11
regions
years,
and,
which parents
yes, with different languages, and So you need to be very pragmatic and really a figure that knows how to make a compromise, otherwise you cannot stay a prime minister for so long.
Martin Schulz, he may or may not have a job in 6 months' time in the European Parliament. Do you think that he
He'll
should...
not starve from hunger or something like that, I think.
I think that's unlikely.
Yeah. He's still a member of the European Parliament.
He's still a member of the European Parliament, for sure.
Okay, I can assure you.
Whether he'd want to go back to the status of an individual member, I don't know. But he wants to keep the post. Your party, the Socialist group, wants him to stay in post, at least to rebalance the three leadership roles. Can you see that happening?
It's not just because we want to rebalance the institution, it's part of the discussion. There are two main political groups. If only one takes all the positions of and the Commission and the Council and the Parliament, there's a problem. But secondly, we are much convinced that we need in the European Parliament also a president who takes up the interests of the European public opinion. That's what we stand for, and in that sense of the European Parliament. So a strong political leader. And I can ask you the question, can you remember one, before Schulz, one president of the European Parliament that made any political impact? I'll answer for you, no. Most of them were very nice, very good in protocol, did a good sort of administrative job, but they were not political leaders. You can be in favor or against Martin Schulz, you can argue on his style, the way he is, but at least he makes a political impact.
You can't do anything about what happens in Slovakia or what happens in Germany, but when it comes to the presidency of the European Parliament, the Council and the Commission, you have a say. Are you
Absolutely.
satisfied with the leadership?
No. I would want to say yes, because I think we absolutely need a good Commission president, and he tries.
What's he missing?
But he misses the... He does have a European conviction, so I cannot say he misses the European conviction. He does have a very sincere European conviction, but he doesn't have the vision for the future of Europe, and he doesn't have the charisma to take the other European leaders and the public opinion with him, and that, yeah, he's not doing it. In the content he tries, he said in the last State of the Union some very good things about doubling the investment, about the lack of social Europe and how to deal with that. I agree, but you should really enforce that, and by being very enthusiastic about his own beliefs, that could have made a little difference. But that
Do you see any prospect of Jean-Claude Juncker being removed from office?
Well, it's not very easy, because we envisage there also, again, a very big contradiction. This is the very first president of the European Commission that not has been just appointed by the Council, which is before Juncker, it was only just, the Council who said, this guy, mostly a guy, yeah, only always, a guy, so always far. A guy, this guy will lead the Commission. We changed that, and that was for the good. We said it's the group that's the biggest in the European Parliament, with this Spitzenkandidat who will lead the European Commission. So it would be a very big contradiction that he would be the first to be removed.
What you've seen in Dieselgate, has it made you angry?
Absolutely, very, very angry. It has been a very big disappointment for me, not just what the car industry did, but also the fact that neither the Commission nor the national governments, and they have to implement, they do the type approval, they have to control and enforce the laws, that they didn't see that. So it's also a very big structural problem.
But did they see it? The Commissioner Verheugen and Commissioner Tajani at the time, did they know what was going on?
They all said no, we didn't know. What, as a chair, I have to believe them. What I do know is that nobody noticed or took the right consequences from the evidence in front of us, and that's the problem.
So with social issues, your daughter, when she grows up, is likely to have 5, 6, 7 different jobs, if not careers, across her working life, as my children also. And the social pillar, as it's being prepared now, is trying somehow to provide a support system which doesn't exist across Europe at the moment. But it's also trying to reposition the industries of the future Do you think Europe is ambitious enough when it comes to preparing for the industries of the future?
No, fortunately not. Absolutely not.
What needs done then?
Well, it's one of the things that I really regret. Also in the speech of Juncker last week, who was a little bit dull, but he said the right things, but he didn't elaborate on that part, and that's worrying, because the social pillar will only exist if we make sure that our welfare system, connected to a good economy, is not just preserved but is changed totally. We need another economy. It will not be this one, because this one is consuming too much of our planet, and this one is not sustainable in the sense that it exploits people much more than it used to do. So we need to rethink that.
All right, just to finish, our team put together some questions for you.
Right.
Quick answers. You don't know, just to let people know, you don't know what's on these.
No.
So you're going to choose 5, and I'm going to ask you these 5 in random succession. So give me 5 cards back.
Should I?
You choose any 5 and give them back to me, and I'll ask you straight away.
Okay.
And I promise you there's nothing terribly embarrassing.
4, 5. There
Great.
you are.
Okay. So, you ready? You may regret this. What song best
Maybe you will
represents...
regret it.
Yeah, I'm sitting carefully here. What song best represents who you are?
What song?
Song best represents who you are.
Ooh, Happiness.
Okay, Pharrell Williams. Good choice.
One of my daughter's favorites as well. So we,
It's one of my
sing it
favorites.
very much when we're on
I love
holiday or
the
on
video
a
is super.
Sunday.
It's a car track.
Yeah.
What or who inspires you?
Ooh, I've never. Also, when I was a very little girl, never had sort of an. How do you say that? An idol.
Big idol.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no. But who for sure? People like Mandela and people that really made a big difference, although it was very difficult for them.
So those who overcame challenge and
Absolutely.
succeeded. Okay. What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
A teacher, I think. My mother was a teacher. She always said, you should be that. I became a politician, but maybe.
My mother was a teacher. I would
Yeah.
never have any aspiration to be a teacher.
No, really?
Never
Oh,
ever.
it's nice.
Okay,
Thing to do.
your next question. What kind of student were you? Teacher's pet or troublemaker?
I was a big troublemaker.
I don't believe that.
Big troublemaker.
Tell me how.
So I've been expelled from school. Had
What'd
to
you do?
Well, I was a troublemaker. I was 14 years old. I didn't listen, but it was on a really very strict Catholic school. So it was in a uniform and everything. It doesn't exist anymore, these uniforms nowadays. But and yes, so I was expelled from school. I had to redo a year, and then I changed a little bit.
Do you think it's good preparation for politics?
Absolutely.
Fair enough. Which book is...
Which is not an encouragement for young people to be a troublemaker at school.
Yeah, we will put a disclaimer at the end of the program.
Thank you.
Which book is currently on your bedside table?
Well, it's a Belgian book. I don't know whether it's Lise Spitz. It's a very young author, and it's her first book.
What's it about?
It's a very tragic story about a young girl that eventually gets violated by her best friends. So
Okay.
it's really very tough, but it's so beautifully written. I think there will be a translation to other languages very soon.
I'm probably filmed by the sound of it as well. Finally, if you weren't sitting here having a beer with me, who across the whole of history, living or dead, would you like to have a beer with?
All of the time, my husband, whom I see so little of, we recently got married, so we're still in our, how to say that?
I'm married 15 years, we're still there too, don't worry about it.
Voilà.
Kathleen Van Brempt, thank you very
Okay,
much. Cheers.
Cheers.